With CM Punk worried about the TBS title on the card for Full Gear leaked, this is Wrestling Hub. My name is John and you're watching the Wrestling Report for October 14th. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Ricky Starks has been making waves in AEW, and during an interview with Instinct Culture, he touched on his future and fired back at people claiming he's too flamboyant to be FTW champion. I like the challenge of having the FTW title because I don't fit the stereotypical mold of what that is, you know, as history has shown. We have Taz, who is a very hard-nosed badass basically, and I'm a badass in my own way. I'll bet you may ask someone where he's a little bit more effeminate and a little bit too flamboyant. He doesn't represent an FTW, but the fact of the matter is I can still whoop your ass and do it in tight pants and an unbuttoned shirt. So I think for me it's making sure that I create that type of lane for myself in that regard. With him defeating Brian Cage last week on Rampage, Starks looks to be moving on to bigger things now that this feud is over. Ahead of their match at Crown Jewel, Goldberg has been saying he will kill and murder Lashley after the Almighty attacked his son. On his 83 Weeks podcast, Eric Bischoff criticized WWE for making Goldberg look immature. The minute that happens, you've lost the audience. I don't know how to say this without saying it, so I'll take whatever shit I take, but they know you're not going to deliver. It makes no sense. It's not artistic, it's not creative, you're not building anticipation, you're not creating a stake, you're not giving us a unique insight into your personality. You're saying something a 15-year-old or 16-year-old would say to somebody else as they're getting their ass kicked in a schoolyard somewhere. On his podcast, Jim Cornette was critical of AEW's formatting of Rampage, especially when it comes to having CM Punk on the show to boost ratings. But the reason why Punk was wrestling on this program is due to the ratings plummeting when Punk don't wrestle on the program. But the problem, besides the formatting, which we will talk about in a second, I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to get some eyeballs on the show. They need to have an excuse for Punk to be wrestling on the show, but they cannot give away the dream matches on Friday Night Rampage. They are trying to serve the master of the ratings, but at least if you were going to do it, format the thing right. While Punk and Daniel Garcia had a fantastic bout last week, it did not do much for ratings, as we'll have to see how the company handles this going forward. After a short stint in AEW as the secret weapon for the Inner Circle during the Jon Moxley feud, Jeff Cobb signed with New Japan, with him telling Sports Illustrated he has unfinished business in the company. He wants to win the G1 tournament and the IWGP heavyweight belt, but he hinted at making a return to AEW. New Japan is the right decision for me. I have a lot of unfinished business here in New Japan, tons of guys I have yet to suplex and tons of championships to win. I also respect what Tony Khan is doing, especially the level of excitement he has brought into the pro wrestling community and all the amazing crossovers going on. Having said that, will I show up in AEW? Right now I have my sights set on the G1 and the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, but if there's something that interests me or the United Empire, you never know. Of course, with AEW having a partnership with New Japan, it's likely we could see Cobb make a return to the American promotion. With AJ Lee announced as an executive producer and commentator for Women of Wrestling, CM Punk on the My Mom's Basement podcast said he had nothing to do with his wife's return to pro wrestling. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think that's just a happy coincidence. I think it was more, so I'll go ahead. They had a great conversation, and Jeannie was just, trying to kickstart WoW, and it really just kind of fit into the stuff that April's doing, writing, producing, so it really was just an idea presented to her that I think opened her up to, oh this is actually perfect. I can help the next generation of female wrestlers with the creative side of stuff, and I don't have to get concussed. Like, it's excellent, so it really fits what she's doing in her wheelhouse. I'm super stoked she's doing it. On Reinvented, Chris Jericho touched on AEW's growth and explained why Dynamite beat Monday Night Raw in the 18 to 49 demographic. We have done bigger demo numbers than WWE Raw has done, which is the flagship show. I think our company came out of nowhere, basically, and really exploded because of a different attitude, and you can see that when you watch our shows. And you were there when we had the show at Arthur Ashe for 20,000 people in New York City, which is basically WWE's backyard. So to draw a crowd like that and get the reception that we had, it seems to me that we're the hottest wrestling company in the world. And more importantly, we have the cool factor. And when you have the cool factor in any form of show business, whether it's wrestling, whether it's music, whether it's a TV show, people jump aboard quickly because they want to figure out what everyone's talking about here. What is all this about? AEW has that. We have changed the industry just by being in existence and focusing on something that was different from every other wrestling company. And I think that's also the reasons why we had such a great fan base that exploded to where we are right now. Following his World Heavyweight title win in WWE, one of CM Punk's first opponents was JBL, with him having a steel cage match at Madison Square Garden where Punk came out victorious. On Stories with Briscoe and Bradshaw, JBL noted that he wanted to make Punk look strong. I had a chance to put over CM Punk when he first came in, Cena, and those guys. That was my role, and I said I'm gonna put you over as strong as possible. I remember the first time we were in MSG, me and CM Punk. We were in the last match. I said, you gotta make your name in the Garden. I'm gonna work my ass off tonight for you, and I'll put you over right in the middle, which is what was called. It was not really as if I came up with that, but I remember that was just the respect you get from coming down in the business. Guys from my past, you guys saying to me, okay, here's what I'm gonna do to pay it forward, and that's what you should be doing. Everyone doesn't do it, but when it happens, you get much love from people when you do something like that. NXT 2.0 debuted last month to mixed reactions. While many thought this could be WWE's chance to bring in younger fans, the median age for viewers of this show is 62. Speaking on his Pro Wrestling for Life podcast, Sean Waltman criticized NXT and their management. Who's in charge of the creative direction of NXT? You can't have 60-plus-year-old people in charge of the creative direction of a show that's geared towards young people. Maybe oversee it, but you got to let young, fresh blood make those decisions. We got to be self-aware enough to know that we don't, and I'm including me too as a 50-year-old man, we don't know what they want. We might think we do, or we might think we know what's best for them, but we don't. We need to listen to people that do. On the Rich Eisen show, CM Punk talked about a possible opponent from New Japan as he has ambitions to face a former heavyweight champion. I got to do that when I take acting gigs, and that's hard enough. So then to be in Japan for 2 weeks to sit in a hotel, I'd probably lose my mind. I'm for sure interested. You said Okada, and I think that's a guy I would definitely be interested in getting in the ring with because again, gone for 7 years, the rise of everybody who has become a superstar in my absence. I definitely want to get back in the ring with him. He's probably the #1 guy over there. After making her own return at SummerSlam to win the SmackDown Women's title from Bianca Belair, Becky Lynch said on the Out of Character podcast that she thinks Ronda Rousey will want to make her return and one-up her. Yeah, and I do think it will. The fact that I've had a baby and came back so great that she'll probably want to one-up me and she'll try to come back in 3 months. Then I'll be right there to punch her right in the face, give her a rock bottom, out of here in 20 seconds, Ronda. Rousey is getting back in shape after giving birth, so it's possible she could make a comeback for a huge money match against Becky. With AEW Full Gear taking place on November 13th, the card for the show was leaked. Tony Khan had a notepad on the sidelines of a Jacksonville Jaguars game, with the matches reading as follows: Kenny Omega vs Hangman Page, MJF vs Darby Allin, Jade Cargill vs Thunder Rosa, Jon Moxley vs Bryan Danielson, CM Punk vs Wardlow, Adam Cole vs Christian Cage, Inner Circle vs American Top Team, Young Bucks vs Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy, Cody Rhodes vs Miro or Malachi Black or Andrade, Lucha Bros vs FTR, and Britt Baker facing a mystery opponent. AEW introduced a new women's belt, the TBS Championship, on Dynamite last week, as a champion is expected to be crowned on January 5th in the finals of a tournament. Speaking on My Mom's Basement, CM Punk expressed his concerns with this title. Yeah, 100% I like the simplicity in wrestling. I think if everybody has a title and everybody's a champion, then nobody's a champion. I think you gotta be really careful with that, and I think TBS title is even pushing it. There's already a women's title. Do we have the depth in the women's division? Do we have the depth in the men's division of a secondary title? I think we've been doing it pretty good so far. I think Miro brought a lot of credibility to that belt and stabilized it, and obviously Kenny Omega is the AEW champion. It's kind of a touchy subject. I know in 2021 everybody wants to, really extol the virtues of women's wrestling, and this isn't a knock. I married a women's wrestler. I just wonder if we have the personnel to support a secondary or a title that's on even footing with the women's title. I don't know. And trios, it's the same thing. It's just like, yeah, there's a lot of stables that we have 3 people. And yeah, you could have me tag with Sting and Darby. But again, if everybody's a champion, nobody's a champion. There needs to be, in my opinion, less titles, but we'll see how it goes. I'm sure all the women will prove me wrong, and I'm okay with that. I think maybe instead of another women's title, maybe women's tag belts, but then again, I don't know. Women's tag belts before trio belts, I'll say that. With the New York Post, Tony Khan talked about SmackDown being commercial free for the final 30 minutes of the show that will be going head to head with Rampage on Friday. It's a little bit different than the Wednesday Night Wars because that was from the very beginning of Dynamite, and we put our head down and it was an every week thing. This seemed like pretty predatory, which is fine if that's how you want to play it. It's not outwardly how they're shown they wanted to play it. I've coined a phrase which is WYW, watch your wrestling. Whatever people want to watch, I want them to watch it. Unfortunately, if we are on at the same time, it's harder for people to watch their wrestling at least live. We can take the commercials out of it. If you want to take the commercials out of it, I can do that too. It doesn't seem very civil, but I have more money than they do, so I can afford to do that longer than they can. But that's how we make money at the end of the day, so I was surprised when they took those out. Following the release of Bray Wyatt from WWE in July, Andrew Zarian pointed out the issues that led to him being let go. I want to be careful with this. I'm not even gonna allude where it came from. Who told me this? I would say that this is probably one of the most legitimate people I've spoken to that would be able to address this. This isn't a friend of a friend told me, and I even have to second source and triple source or anything like that. This is as close to first-hand information as you could possibly get, and it's not Bray. It's nobody that you would ever imagine. Bray was being difficult, and I'm gonna fill in a lot. I'm not even gonna quote, because I have the quote, but I don't want to quote it. He was a little difficult. He had some performance issues in the ring. He had some weight issues. I'm not saying that that's the reason. I'm not gonna say that's the reason. You can kind of piece things together as to the things when you evaluate a talent and you're like, okay, we need this and we need that, and this is the plan moving forward. You need someone. Sometimes the decision is easier to make if you make it more difficult for them to make that decision. So there is no one reason. By the way, let me just put it out there. Financially, yes, there was a financial issue. There were plenty of other scenarios here. I don't think he was happy, and I would tell you that these decisions are not cut and dry. It's not like, oh, it was a money thing and that's it. Obviously, they're gonna say that that'll be the public answer, because most likely it played a part in money, because you can only like some guys so much when you're losing money. I'm not saying they were losing money, but I'm just putting it out there like that. There were numerous reasons, not one. And this was your Pro Wrestling News Update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.